Yes, just as the production notes say, William Cooper was a friend of mine whom I've never met in person. We used to talk on the phone until he was killed by agents of the deep state. What you are about to hear is preparation for what I believe will be revealed on July 4th, 2019. Buckle up.
You're listening to the Hour of the Time. I'm William Cooper. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight, once again, we have scooped the world. And I mean the world. Not long ago, John Fitzgerald Kennedy Jr. was flying in a plane with his wife and his wife's cousin. And the plane never made it to its first scheduled stop, which was Martha's Vineyard, the airport on Martha's Vineyard. It was a 90-minute flight from his takeoff point to Martha's Vineyard, and it was reported that his plane was missing. It was also reported that visibility that night was almost zero, that you couldn't see anything, and that he should not have been flying because he didn't have a pilot instrument rating. It was also said that the ceiling was really low. The experts told us that there was no communication between John F. Kennedy Jr.'s airplane and any ground station during the flight, and that the plane vanished. Well, initial reports of our people who live in that part of the world told me that that just was not true. Also, somebody had planted a transponder, also known as a beacon, off Montauk Point to fool the air search. A beacon, also known as a transponder, is in every airplane that flies. And if the plane crashes, the beacon, any kind of a real hard impact or something that is not supposed to happen, triggers the mechanism in the beacon, and it begins to broadcast a radio signal that basically says help, 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 help over and over and over and over and over again. It's just a standard radio signal that everybody in the world recognizes when they hear it as a downed aircraft, an aircraft that has crashed. Now, this phony beacon that was located off Montauk Point was many, many, many miles away from where John F. Kennedy's plane actually crashed. It was no accident that the beacon was there. No other plane had crashed in that area. Somebody planted that beacon so that the rescue effort would not go near the area of the real crash. The reason for that is obvious. If anybody happened to survive the crash, they might be picked up alive. However, if nobody was looking for them there, they would spend so many hours in that cold water that by the time anybody ever found them, they would be dead. This was an intentional deception to concentrate the search away from the actual place where John F. Kennedy Jr.'s plane crashed. We also had reports from local people in Martha's Vineyard and in Boston that local TV reports had reported that John F. Kennedy did indeed contact the tower at Martha's Vineyard. During his final approach, only 10 miles from the end of the island, getting ready to land and descending on his approach glide path, just a few minutes away from landing. When we contacted the people in the tower there, as soon as they discovered what we had called to find out, no one would talk to us. When we called the news people who had reported it, there was fear in their voice, and they denied ever having reported that John F. Kennedy, and I mean denied to me personally, that John F. Kennedy had ever called or that they had ever reported that he made a radio call to any place on the ground. They lied, ladies and gentlemen, and they lied blatantly. All of their footage for the reporting station WCVB-TV in Boston is maintained by an independent company that archives all of their air footage, their videotape. WCVB-TV in Boston called this company and told them to cut the tape on that particular day at a particular time code, and then cut out all from that point all the way up to the 6 o'clock news and destroy it. Well, the company didn't do that. Instead, they waited until somebody ordered the tape, and then they would go to the time code and cut it there. The only thing is WCVB-TV in Boston gave them the wrong time code, and that enabled us to know that they did actually report that John F. Kennedy had called the tower at Martha's Vineyard Airport. Now the trick was to get the whole tape, which we were told did not exist. Our people actually went there, obtained the tape, the whole tape, nothing but the tape, the truth, and you're going to hear it tonight. You're going to hear the report of the phony beacon off Montauk Point. You're going to hear a lot of things. Pay attention to the detail. The first tape you're going to hear is the first tape that we obtained, right up to the cut that was just about 30 seconds too late, but did indeed cut at a point where we could not prove that he had called, only that they had begun to report it. I will tell you when that cut occurs. Then we pick up the second tape, the tape that contains the whole story. And you will be amazed. Once again, we have scooped the world, ladies and gentlemen. I cannot give you the names of any of the people who participated in this operation. People who are always sticking their neck out to do their job for the Intelligence Service and the Citizens Agency for Joint Intelligence. Very brave men and women, all across this country and in fact around the world. So listen very, very closely. You are going, ladies and gentlemen, to hear the smoking gun, the proverbial smoking gun.
Was expecting the Kennedys at Martha's Vineyard at about 10 o'clock, heard nothing, contacted the airport, were told there had been no word from the plane. They contacted FAA officials who then began this search, and it has at this point been threefold. Because of a beacon, an emergency beacon that was detected off of Long Island, Montauk Point, early this morning at about 2:15, as a matter of fact. Crews scoured that area first and have continued to scour that area, but have found nothing. They have centered the search around a 373 square mile area off of eastern Long Island. They also, because of a radar track just miles west of the vineyard last night, have searched and have located that as a major search point as well. In addition to that, Air National Guard pilots are tracing what they believe to have been the route that JFK would have taken last night. At this point, according to what the family has told us, it is believed that Kennedy was the pilot of the plane, and that in fact he was the only one, the only pilot on board. There had been earlier reports that perhaps there had been a fourth passenger, a flight instructor. According to the family and what they have told us, that is not the case. The family is also saying that they are not sure that JFK Jr. had the proper license to pilot the plane last night, though the FAA has in fact not confirmed that. What is known as a fact is that because of the type of aircraft, the flight and the weather conditions last night, an official flight plan was not filed, nor was one necessary. And because there is no flight plan, no official plan, the search and rescue teams can only surmise by looking at maps and knowing the kind of plan involved what the route would have been, and they are trying to trace that this morning. They have done so unsuccessfully several times, but are continuing to make that a part of the search this morning. It normally is approximately a 90-minute flight from Caldwell, New Jersey to the Martha's Vineyard Airport. That's the latest that we know about the search. We are continuing to be in contact with the Kennedy family, as well as Coast Guard and air rescue teams, as well as officials at the White House who tell us that the Pentagon will hold a news conference approximately an hour from now. Anthony?
All right, Susan, thank you. Obviously, the Air Force involved in this search as well, as is the Coast Guard, and volunteers, Civil Air Patrol. I think they're trying to get almost any plane they can or helicopter they can up into the sky at this point to search these areas off the Vineyard and off Montauk Point at the tip of Long Island to see if there can be any debris found. But of course, the size of this plane, a small single-engine plane in this vastness of ocean, or the sound, is going to be very difficult, obviously, to find without some sort of emergency radio beacon, and also given some of the weather conditions we see today from these live pictures from our news helicopter. Kelly Tuthill is at Martha's Vineyard. She's at the airport there, has been all morning, and has some new information. Kelly?
Anthony, I'm standing with Lieutenant Colonel Richard Stanley of the Massachusetts Civil Air Patrol. He can only talk about the search that's happening right here in Martha's Vineyard, but I asked him to come over just to give you some more information about what's happening here. I'm going to put him on the phone, and Anthony, maybe you can ask him a question or two.
Very good. Lieutenant Colonel, this is Anthony Everett. I just have a couple of questions for you. What can you tell us about the search effort being conducted from the airport there on Martha's Vineyard?
Well, basically what we've done, we got out early this morning, and we were sent directly to Martha's Vineyard. And we have conducted a search on the island here, the perimeter and the inland, etc. And we're just one segment of this whole search. The mission base for Massachusetts is at Worcester. And your reporter has the phone number there with the mission coordinator. We're just an air crew, there's three of us here. We just completed Martha's Vineyard, and we're going out on another search at this time.
Now, have you been given this information that we've heard that the last radar contact for this plane was just a few miles west of the Vineyard? Have you heard that at all?
We didn't hear that location. We heard that there was an NTAP location.
An NCAP location?
Yeah, that's what they call that, an NTAP. What they do is they try to identify a particular aircraft. In other words, he was squawking a VFR code 1200.
Right.
And those are not designated transponder codes. And what it is they'll show up on radar, but you have to identify that aircraft somehow. So they try to go back to the starting point, say New Jersey. And if they can identify that aircraft taken off at that airport and identify his particular echo return, then they can trace that aircraft along its route until it disappears.
What kind of aircraft are you using in your search?
It's a 182.
And tell me what the conditions are like today. We keep looking at our live helicopter pictures over the Vineyard, and it seems to be hazy, a bit foggy. What are the conditions like for you?
It's very hazy. It's still about 7 miles visibility. However, there's a lot of traffic coming and going, and that, trying to watch traffic and do your search too, it keeps you busy.
What kind of an altitude are you flying during the search? 1,500 feet.
Yeah.
And how, with the planes that you're flying, how much time have you got in the air before you've got to get back to the airport?
We can fly 6 hours.
6 hours. And what kind of a search grid? Did you have a search grid laid out of a certain amount of square miles?
We did a grid on the island, but with the island as such as it is, we can cover the whole thing in a pattern.
Right. So your job there at this point is done? Or are you standing by to wait for further instructions?
We've got further instructions, and I can't give you those at this time.
Okay. Lieutenant Colonel Richard Stanley of the Civil Air Patrol, we appreciate your talking to us. If Kelly Tuthill is still standing by, if you could put her back on the phone for us, we'd appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
Sure, thank you.
So they searched that area of the island itself, which makes sense, obviously, in case the plane, in fact, had gone down there. Go ahead.
Going back to what you had, you said you heard rumors of an NTAP west of the
That's
island.
Correct, yes.
Yeah. I saw the Coast Guard out there. That's the only thing I had that would hint in that direction.
Okay, yeah. There are reports that there were radar contacts within a few miles west of the vineyard.
Yeah,
so you did
okay.
see Coast Guard vessels out there searching?
Not vessels, helicopters.
Coast Guard helicopters?
Yeah.
Okay, very good.
Okay?
Okay, thank you, sir.
Sure thing.
Kelly?
I'm back on, Anthony.
Okay, Kelly. What else have you learned from down there? Is there any other indication of increased activity or any other indication of family members or reaction from people at the airport?
No, certainly a lot of activity. I mean, it's just since I've been talking to you this morning, this has really become a hotbed of activity with people trying to get information about the search. There's a lot of reporters here, as you can imagine, trying to gain information. And what we're seeing is more of these civil air patrols. I told you earlier about the Suffolk County, New York pilots who had flown up from Long Island to check the airways and the waterways from that area to Martha's Vineyard, and then they were heading back, and they should have left a few minutes ago to head back to Long Island and continue their search. Now, I don't know if you've got to ask Lieutenant Colonel this question, but I asked him now, we keep hearing about this area near Martha's Vineyard. Does that mean they're only focusing on this area, or is that B's focus? And he said that's not his impression. He's not the coordinator, obviously, of the whole search, but he said because there was no flight plan, they're searching everywhere. I mean, they're just checking everything because they're not exactly sure where this plane could be.
Right, that's our indication, too, is that search that we talked about off Montauk Point is continuing at this hour as well, over about 300-plus square nautical mile area, which is a huge area to search for a small plane, obviously. All right, Kelly, thank you. We'll let you go and try to find some other folks there, and we appreciate all your efforts down there. And we do have also Amalia Beretta, who's in Hyannisport at the Kennedy compound, where the wedding has been canceled. We'll get to her in just a moment. We mentioned before as well that President Clinton had issued a statement today earlier about their concern about the reports of the plane missing. The President was informed earlier this morning of the reported disappearance, and the last line of his comments this morning through a spokesman were these: all our prayers and thoughts are with the families of those on board. And initially there was some confusion as to who exactly was on board. We believed initially there was a fourth person on board who we thought was a flight instructor, but it's been confirmed now that there were only 3 people on board: John F. Kennedy Jr., who was flying the aircraft. He was the licensed pilot on board. His wife, Carolyn Bessette Kennedy, who you can see there just to the left of him on your screen, and her sister, Lauren. So there were 3 of them on this plane. It's a 4-seater, single-engine plane, but there were 3 of them on board, and in fact, another pilot at the airport in New Jersey had happened to see them get on the plane last night, and said that when they took off, the conditions were much less than favorable, that they were hazy and foggy and still within the realm of visual flight rules, but not optimum conditions, especially to be flying over the ocean with the sound, where it's critical to maintain some sort of element of the horizon, and the possibility of being lost or disoriented does exist even with the sophisticated equipment that most of these planes have on board at this point. We continue to monitor this. There were supposed to be 275 people joining the Kennedy family for a celebration at the compound in Hyannisport today for the marriage of Rory Kennedy, as we've said, the youngest of Robert Kennedy's children. And that has been postponed as the Kennedy family waits for word. And an interesting wrinkle that we heard earlier was that the Kennedy family issued a statement, the one statement they've issued today, saying that they do not believe, or at least there's some confusion as to whether or not JFK Jr. was in fact licensed to fly this type of plane under these type of conditions at this time. So we're still trying to sort that out, because we know he had, from all other reports, a VFR license. Had gotten that through training in Florida, but at this point we don't know exactly why the Kennedy family has issued a statement to the contrary of that. Susan's in the newsroom, again with more information as it comes in. Susan?
Anthony, as we've been telling you this morning, this search effort is being headquartered at the Langley Air Force Base in Virginia. Lieutenant Colonel Doug McCoy is the Public Information Officer. He joins me on the phone. Lieutenant Colonel, thank you for being with us. Please give us an update on the search.
We're searching as much as we can with all the assets we have available all along the presumed flight path from Essex County Airport, from which he took off to the presumed destination of Martha's Vineyard. So we've got right now about 15 Civil Air Patrol aircraft involving 156 people looking in a very disciplined way in a very busy airspace area. That's over Long Island Sound and along the south coast of Long Island, of course, up all along the flight path up around Martha's Vineyard. So it's a busy time. Then the Coast Guard is also involved searching on the water and along the shore and out as far as they can go. So it's a very busy time. One thing I might add is we're concerned about the amount of air traffic in the area. That's being closely coordinated. The search effort is being closely coordinated by an Air Force Air National Guard unit out in New York, a flying command post, if you will. So we caution against folks flying out there just to look. It's a busy airspace.
Colonel, you described it as a disciplined search. What exactly does that mean?
Well, searching for a downed airplane or a hiker or anything, it takes a lot of training, and the Civil Air Patrol is trained specifically how to do that. I believe it is they fly a kind of a grid pattern. There's a lot of coordination, talk back and forth, because they don't want to miss any square footage when they're looking, and so it takes a lot of control and a lot of training and a lot of discipline.
It's my understanding that you're searching a 373 square mile area, and to do it successfully and completely one time, it's about a 3-hour endeavor. Is that true?
I haven't heard that data, so I can't confirm that.
Can you tell us, has there been any communication of any sort, radar, beacon, or otherwise, from this plane since it took off last night?
I cannot say what's available. What I can say, though, is that the FAA and the Air Force are consolidating their radar data, and as the data comes in and we have more information to work with, the search will be refined, but that's as far as I can go on that.
Can you confirm that, in fact, the plane in question was located on radar just west of Martha's Vineyard last night?
I can't confirm that, I'm sorry.
Can you tell me, have you found anything at all in the water?
I don't know. I have not heard that.
Has there been any indication of any debris from anything that possibly could be a downed plane?
I have not heard anything like that here at the Rescue Coordination Center. If that information's out there, it hasn't come to me.
It is not out there. I'm simply asking.
Okay.
And I don't want anyone to think that, in fact, that it is out there. We're just curious because we want to know, of course, if anything at all has been located, and if there's any reason that any particular spot of your search is more important to you than another at this point.
No, we've got a big area to cover, and we haven't started to refine the search yet.
As a professional, sir, and from what you have heard, is it at all possible, is there any optimism that there is a plane in the water where there perhaps are people holding on for dear life?
If I were to go there, I would be speculating, and that would be a disservice to the people flying that airplane, and so I don't want to do that.
And at this point, how long will this search continue?
The search, we're in for the long haul. We'll search as long as we need to until we have an outcome.
What exactly does that mean? Forgive my ignorance, but I'm not familiar. Does it change after dark? Do you just go indefinitely? Is there any type of a cutoff time?
My understanding of the rescue process is that there will be a time when enough data is gathered and established to make a decision to call off a rescue, but every circumstance is different, and so to say that this is going to last 48 hours or 72 hours or a week, I can't go there at this point.
If something is discovered, what will the process be? In other words, what's the chain of command, and how will we be notified?
If something is discovered, we will try to let people know. Right now, we're just taking a ton of media calls and calls from concerned citizens, and as soon as we have more definitive detail, we'll let all the right people know and go from there.
Lieutenant Colonel Doug McCoy, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you can add this morning to this search?
Just to repeat, the search airspace is very, very busy. There's a lot of airplanes in the air. It also happens to be in the area where that's the approach to JFK. So if there are those out there that are wanting to fly into the area just because they want to kind of look around, I would caution them against that. That would not help our efforts at all.
You bring up an interesting point, though. Is the Air Force contacting other commercial pilots to keep their eyes open as well?
Commercial aviators have what they call emergency locator transmitter radio. I've lost the term here, that will allow them to pick up a beacon if there is one out there. So within reason, and the FAA is involved, within reason, people are being notified to kind of keep their eyes open.
Have any flights of a commercial nature or private nature, for that matter, been postponed or canceled because of this search?
I am not aware of that.
Lieutenant Colonel Doug McCoy, thank you so much for talking with us this morning. We will be getting back to you hopefully within the next hour for an update.
You're welcome.
And as you just heard, folks, the search is continuing in several ways, on several fronts. They're calling it a massive search. 15 aircraft, 156 people involved in a search that they are calling disciplined, which means that they are flying in a grid pattern, checking every square mile of the 373 in question between the airport in New Jersey and Martha's Vineyard, the plane having taken off last night at 8:45 for a 90-minute flight that did not at a 10 o'clock land as many people expected it would. It was at that time that the FAA was notified, and so the Air National Guard, and the search is being centered and coordinated from the Langley Air Force Base. At 1 o'clock this afternoon, the Pentagon has scheduled a press conference. Hopefully we'll have more information, but as you just heard from the public information officer for the Air Force at Langley, at this point there is no indication that they have found anything as they continue searching the waters between New Jersey and Martha's Vineyard. Anthony?
All right, Susan, thank you. It's interesting, irony, obviously, that part of this search area is the approach to JFK Airport, of all things, and that perhaps complicating matters a little bit for the flight paths of planes coming into that airport and for the searchers who are flying their grid patterns over this 373 square mile area. Of course, you know, you hear stories frequently about survival at sea in the case of a sailing vessel that may go over, and people who survive in a life raft for sometimes months at a time in some of the most adverse conditions. But in a small plane, obviously, you're not talking about having a life raft. Maybe there's a life vest, maybe part of the debris floats and helps you. But the chances, obviously, one would think of surviving a plane crash at sea for an extended period of time would be extraordinarily difficult, whereas in some other circumstances, perhaps in a sailboat or something like that, you might have a little more time and a little more chance. We mentioned that the wedding of Rory Kennedy has been postponed today, and Amaya Beretta is at the Hyannisport compound where that wedding was scheduled to take place. Amaya?
Yes, good afternoon, Anthony. Not too much has changed since I talked to you about an hour ago, except that a few more people have gathered. Many of them folks from the media, reporters, photographers gathered here. And there are also some neighbors and some curious who have gathered here. I've spoken with them, and they're just kind of hanging out outside on the street, outside the compound here. They've had to walk in because police details have closed off the road to traffic, but in any event, they have come to, as they say, give some support to the family. It's another one of those terrible waiting times for the family that we've known about so much. So they say that, many of them say, especially the older ones, they remember, you know, the happy days, have followed the family since JFK was in the White House, and they feel the pull, the Kennedy mystique, if you will, of the Kennedy family, and feel a sense that they need to come over here and watch and see, and all of them, of course, saying that they're hoping for good news. As far as activity in the compound, we are quite a distance from the houses, quite a distance from the tent that has been set up for originally for what was going to be a wedding here. And I was told that about a half an hour ago, a mass was said here. There are 3 priests here at the compound, including the priest that was supposed to be officiating at the wedding this afternoon, and we are told that those members of the family and any friends or close people close to the family who are here attended mass, presumably to wait for the healthy and good return of John F. Kennedy Jr., his wife, and his sister-in-law, that they may be found alive and safe. So that's about all that's going on from here. We have been able to see some members of the family. The most recognizable person is Ethel Kennedy. So that's about all that's going on from here. We have been able to see some members of the family. The most recognizable person is Ethel Kennedy. That's what we've seen, and there have been some hugs that we can see from a distance, but they are not coming out and talking to us, not yet at any rate. Joe Kennedy, the former congressman, was here for about an hour this morning, and he left about a half an hour ago. We are not being told where he went. I guess our best guess could be that he has flown over to Martha's Vineyard, as I understand it. The search has been concentrated now over there, but that is only a guess. We are not being told where he has gone. We do understand that Senator Ted Kennedy is here at the compound as well. So, Anthony, that's the scene from here.
All right, Amalia, thank you. We'll continue to check back with you. We mentioned earlier the President has been apprised of this situation since early this morning, has been monitoring the situation since early this morning. We also have been told that the Pentagon is planning a press briefing in about half an hour or so, around 1 o'clock, presumably to talk about the efforts of the Air Force and all of this. We go now to Marty Johnson, who is live at our Washington Bureau with more information on exactly the Washington response and how the President is being apprised of what's happening here in Massachusetts. Marty?
That's right, Anthony. This is a very anxious time here in Washington. White House Chief of Staff John Podesta says that Mr. Clinton was informed of the disappearance of the plane carrying John F. Kennedy Jr. and his wife Carolyn Bessette Kennedy at about 7 this morning. He is said to be very concerned. He is spending the weekend at Camp David in Western Maryland, there to relax and meet with Israel's Prime Minister. Although there have been no plans announced for the President to return, he is said to be very concerned, monitoring the situation. The White House statement, which I have right here, says all their prayers and thoughts are with the families of those on board the plane. The White House confirmed that Mr. Clinton today called Carolyn Kennedy Schlossberg, John F. Kennedy Jr.'s sister, his uncle, Senator Ted Kennedy, of course, and Housing Secretary Andrew Cuomo, who is married to Carrie Kennedy, a cousin of John F. Kennedy Jr. The statement further said that the President is being kept fully apprised and informed of the search by the Coast Guard, the FAA, the Department of Transportation, the Department of Defense. Of course, as you mentioned, this afternoon, the Pentagon will be briefing reporters here in Washington at about 1 o'clock. We expect to hear more then about the status of the search going on in the area. On a personal note, of course, Mr. Clinton has been very close with the Kennedys over the years. We all remember the pictures, of course, that seemed to be so prevalent all the way through his first campaign of him shaking hands with the 35th president, and of course, more recently, pictures of him shaking hands with that president's son, John Kennedy Jr., and meeting his young bride as well. That's the situation here in Washington, Anthony. Of course, again, we'll be keeping an eye on that press briefing at 1 o'clock and be back with you with more. Anthony?
All right, Marty, thank you. You know, as we sit here and we look at the various monitors that we have to monitor the network news feeds and our competitors as well, I'm struck by the fact that ever since about 9 or 10 o'clock this morning, all of our colleagues at the networks and our competitors here in this market as well have all been on the air with nonstop coverage of this. And Clark, you and I were talking before about it's a testament to some extent to the intense interest with this family, the intense legacy of the 35th President of the United States, and the intense scrutiny as well under which this family has lived and continues to live.
Well, made so by the fact that such as this, a family like no other in American history, that seems to get into situations is drawn by whatever kind of people have used words like curses and mystical interventions and destiny and all these other fancy words that try to explain what can somehow not be explained. This is a family that has been attracted to the flame. There's no question about it. They want to be out there. They stick their necks out there. They stick their chins out there. They take chances. They are daring. They are reckless sometimes. And it seems to be a passion with them, a desperate need, not just politically. They've had certainly some members of the family have exhibited this in combat, in military situations. We've seen it in business, in all sorts of ways. And this is what makes them what causes us to be so deeply fascinated by them, and why we pivot so on every event like this. It is, in this sense of the word, one uses this word reluctantly, but there's no better word. This is a unique family in this sense of the word.
Okay, we're going to go to Susan Warnick in the newsroom who has some breaking information. Susan?
We have been told by the Coast Guard that, in fact, there is now evidence of a last communication last night with JFK Jr.'s plane as it was making an approach to Martha's Vineyard Airport. Petty Officer Todd Burgun joins us from the Coast Guard base in Boston. He is a Petty Officer and a Public Information Officer. Thank you for being with us, sir. What can you tell us about this last communication with JFK Jr.'s plane?
All I really know at this time is that it was at 9:39 p.m. and it was with the FAA, and it was on
their own.
And that's where the tape was cut, ladies and gentlemen. It skips 5 hours and goes right into the 6 o'clock news.
Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, which is bringing a boat from Montauk, and that boat should be here around 8 o'clock. And as Susan mentioned, that boat has sophisticated sonar equipment that can search the bottom of the ocean. And in this particular area, the ocean is really only about 26 to 100 feet deep. That's not significant, really, in terms of depth, and will also give a very sound sonar image back to that NOAA boat. Coast Guard officials will search until dark, they say. After that, they're hoping to get that NOAA vessel with its sonar working a search grid and hoping to find some sort of information between now and the morning hours. Reporting live from Coast Guard headquarters, I'm Anthony Everett, News Center 5. Chet and Heather, back to you.
Anthony, all right, thank you. And the Admiral Larrabee said that they would schedule another news conference later on this evening should developments warrant, should they find some additional and more significant pieces.
You're listening now to the 6 o'clock news. It skipped 5 hours from the time the tape was cut right up to the 6 o'clock news.
Earlier may not be true that there was actually no radio communication with JFK Jr.'s plane after it left New Jersey. We had hoped that perhaps there was some radio communication.
Now listen carefully, folks, as the news anchor denies, the communication.
Anthony Everett, News Center 5. Chet and Heather, back to you.
Anthony, all right, thank you. And the Admiral Larrabee said that they would schedule another news conference later on this evening should developments warrant, should they find some additional and more significant pieces of that airplane. They'll update us with another news conference.
Another thing he said that was a bit discouraging was something we had thought earlier may not be true, that there was actually no radio communication with JFK Jr.'s plane after it left New Jersey. We had hoped that perhaps there was some radio communication, of course, most recently at Martha's Vineyard this last night at about 9 o'clock, 9:30, when perhaps things started to go wrong. We had hoped we could learn from that, but it seems that there may be no evidence because there may be no recording to listen to get those details from.
All right, Heather, News Center 5 at 6 begins now.
Live from News Center 5, this is a special report.
We are still in the search and rescue phase, and I want to underscore that. The importance of us doing a thorough search out there is what we're focused on, and we're going to do everything we can to continue to investigate the current information on future debris and to continue to search for survivors.
The Coast Guard holds out hope for survivors after the apparent crash of a small airplane carrying John F. Kennedy Jr., his wife, and sister-in-law. Our coverage continues now at 6 with more on this very disturbing story that's been developing all day long off of Martha's Vineyard.
The Coast Guard continues to search at this hour for the small single-engine plane that was carrying John F. Kennedy Jr., his wife Carolyn, and Carolyn's sister Lauren Bissett. The search area has now been narrowed greatly. It is centered about 17 miles southwest of Martha's Vineyard. The plane was to have landed at Martha's Vineyard to drop off Mrs. Kennedy's sister, and then was to travel on to Hyannisport for the wedding this evening of JFK Jr.'s cousin, Rory. So far today, crews and residents have found luggage belonging to Lauren Bissett and several pieces of the missing airplane. The single-engine Piper Saratoga left Fairfield, New Jersey, to Caldwell Airport last night at around 8:30 and was due to arrive on Martha's Vineyard.
ABC called to set up an interview about a book I'd written. My vanity scurried to...
As we sit here and we look at the various months...
This is the second tape, folks. This is the second tape that we obtained that has the whole thing. This has the smoking gun.
All of our colleagues at the networks and our competitors here in this market as well have all been on the air with nonstop coverage of this. And Clark, you and I were talking before about it's a testament to some extent to the intense interest with this family, the intense legacy of the 35th President of the United States, and the intense scrutiny as well under which this family has lived and continues to live.
Well, made so by the fact of such as this. A family like no other in American history that seems to get into situations is drawn by whatever kind of people have used words like curses and mystical interventions and destiny and all these other fancy words that try to explain what can somehow not be explained. This is a family that has been attracted to the flame. There's no question about it. They want to be out there. They stick their necks out there. They stick their chins out there. They take chances. They are daring. They are reckless sometimes. And it seems to be a passion with them, a desperate need, not just politically. They've had their, certainly some members of the family have exhibited this in combat, in military situations. We've seen it in business, in all sorts of ways. And this is what makes them so, what causes us to be so deeply fascinated by them, and why we pivot so on every event like this. It is, in this sense of the word, one uses this word reluctantly, but there's no better word. This is a unique family in this sense of the word.
Okay, we're going to go to Susan Warnick in the newsroom who has some breaking information. Susan?
We have been told by the Coast Guard that, in fact, there is now evidence of a last communication last night with JFK Jr.'s plane as it was making an approach to Martha's Vineyard Airport. Petty Officer Todd Burgun joins us from the Coast Guard base in Boston. He is the Petty Officer and a Public Information Officer. Thank you for being with us, sir. What can you tell us about this last communication with JFK Jr.'s plane?
All I really know at this time is that it was at 9:39 p.m. and it was with the FAA, and it was on its final approach to Martha's Vineyard. All that really helps us do as far as the search is it might give us a location to search in, because if it was that close to Martha's Vineyard with the last contact, then chances are it may be in that area if in fact it did go down.
Officer, for those of us who are not that intimately familiar with flying and piloting a plane, when you say you had radio contact, can you explain exactly what that means? Did JFK Jr. himself radio in that he was on a final approach?
Unfortunately, I did not have the specifics of the call. The call came to the FAA, and I cannot speak for them and what was said.
Would that be the routine procedure, however, in a flight?
I believe it would be, yes. They made contact with the tower.
So at 9:39, to the best of your information, JFK Jr. made a contact with the airport, with the flight controllers, the air traffic controllers at Martha's Vineyard Airport, that he was on a final descent.
That is correct.
At 9:39. We also have information that the FAA also has a radar location of 2,500 feet, about 10 miles off the vineyard, at approximately the same time. Do you have any information?
No, I do not have any information on that.
Given that information, is it safe to assume that that would be the location of one part of the search?
Yes, it is. That is a flagged area of the search. We are searching still the entire location between Caldwell, New Jersey, and Hyannis, Massachusetts.
When you say Hyannis, and of course that includes the area around Martha's Vineyard.
Yes, the plane was making two stops. The plane was originally took off from Caldwell, New Jersey at 8:38 p.m. Friday evening. It was scheduled to land in Martha's Vineyard at around 10 p.m. and then scheduled to land in Hyannis at around 12.
At midnight?
Yes, that's correct.
Well, that's new information, because previously there was some indication that the trip to Hyannis Airport would be made this morning. So that's new information. The plane left New Jersey at 8:38, expected to arrive at Martha's Vineyard. For what purpose? Do you know, sir?
I do not have that information now.
But they were scheduled then to take off from Martha's Vineyard Airport, I would assume, at about 11 o'clock, because it certainly is no longer than about a 30-35-minute flight between Martha's Vineyard and Hyannis.
That's correct. Well, it's only speculation. I cannot comment on. They did not leave a flight plan, so I did not have the specifics of the flight.
Can you explain for us, please, describe the search to the best as you can that the Coast Guard is involved in?
Yeah, the Coast Guard now we have a massive search underway, including several aircraft from throughout the district, mainly from Coast Guard Air Station Cape Cod, and also from several stations throughout the coast.
So it's safe for us to assume now that when the family members in Hyannis did not hear word from the from the people on board the plane at midnight when they expected it to land.
Yeah, I cannot comment on exactly how that transpired.
I understand, but you can comment on your search and the last radio transmission again, which was at 9:39.
Yes, p.m. last night. That's correct.
Ostensibly JFK radioing the tower at Martha's Vineyard Airport that he was making his final.
That's my understanding. Yes.
And that's the last time the plane was heard from.
That is correct.
At approximately 2,500 feet, 10 miles offshore.
That's my understanding. Like I said, as far as that radar location, I do not have that information.
Officer, is there anything that I failed to ask you that we should know that we do know either about the search or about the situation last night?
No, I think that covers everything we're doing. Like I said, we have an extensive search underway with aircraft and boats and vessels in the water, and we're searching every possible area we can.
Officer Berggun, what are the conditions right now during your search?
I don't have that information.
When you do a search like this, even though you can't talk about the particulars of this one, could you describe how it occurs? We talked to somebody from the Langley Air Force Base. They described this as a disciplined search. What exactly does it mean?
Well, basically what the Coast Guard does in a situation like this is they'll map out, they'll chart out the area that they're going to search, and they'll do what they call like a crosshatch pattern. And they'll fly, picture like a checkerboard, and they'll cross and make crosses. They'll start different, going from point to point with their aircraft, and same thing with the vessels in the water.
To the best of your knowledge, have they found anything at all in the water?
No, nothing at all.
How long have you been searching in the water?
I'm not sure the exact time. I know it's from early hours this morning.
How long will you continue to search?
I don't have that information. I cannot make that call right now.
How does it normally work? What factors are involved as you determine how long a search will continue?
There's several factors that could be involved in that. I don't want to speculate on anything. On several searches, it depends on many different factors. It depends on if they find anything at all. It depends on weather conditions. It depends on time of day. There's several factors that can determine the length of a search. I don't want to speculate on this search.
And as the search continues minute by minute, I assume that decisions are also being made.
That is correct.
In a similar way. Petty Officer Todd Berggun from the Coast Guard base in Boston, thank you very much for your time and information. If it's all right, sir, we will check back with you within an hour or so for any update.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Folks, also, as we've been telling you, the Pentagon will hold a press conference at about 1 o'clock this afternoon, and the Coast Guard, unless there is reason for it sooner, will hold a press conference at 4 o'clock this afternoon. But again, we have confirmed that at 9:39 last night, JFK did radio air traffic controllers at the Martha's Vineyard Airport that he was making his final approach. He was approximately 2,500 feet, 10 miles offshore. It's the last communication or tracking of the plane last night that took off from New Jersey at 8:38, was expected at 10 o'clock at Martha's Vineyard Airport, and then was expected new information at Hyannis Airport at midnight. Of course, as we have said, it was not heard from since 9:39 last night. Chet Curtis joins us now, an accomplished pilot himself. Chet?
Thank you, Susan. Heather Kahn also joins me here at the anchor desk, and we'll continue to follow this story until we have some resolution. And hopefully they will resolve this thing pretty quickly. They now have, as you heard, are concentrating the search to an area close to Martha's Vineyard where JFK Jr. last reported he was about 10 miles out and flying at 2,500 feet, which would not be unusual 10 miles away from the airport. Lisa Stark has some information on the radar tracking that air traffic control was doing on that flight. So let's hear from Lisa Stark now.
We have learned that this plane took off from the Essex Airport, as you know, in Caldwell, New Jersey, and was flying at an altitude of 5,500 feet. The plane then went out over the ocean, and as it was approaching the vineyard, we're told it descended to 2,500 feet. Then there's another radar hit, apparently at 2,100 feet, and then another radar hit at 1,300 feet, and that is the last radar hit, we are told, before apparently the plane disappeared off radar. And we are told that radar hit did occur about 19 miles from the Vineyard Airport. It may be as little as 10 miles actually off the coast of the Vineyard, but 19 miles from the airport. But we are told again that 1,300 feet apparently is the last altitude at which that plane registered on radar, and then it was lost.
Chet, as Susan mentioned, you are an accomplished pilot. Chet's been piloting planes now for over 20 years, so you're a very good source on this story, as well as the news gatherer. altitude that John F. Kennedy Jr. was at as he was approaching Martha's Vineyard Airport, is that a normal altitude? Is that a safe altitude?
Sure it is. We just heard now 1,300 feet, and one thing to remember is there's so much that we don't know, and we're plugging in a lot of information here into spaces that we're not exactly sure of. To be at 2,500 feet, 10 miles out is not unusual. To be at 1,300 feet, 6 or 7 miles out would not be unusual. He was a decent pilot, everyone by every measure, did not have an instrument rating. The weather was hazy. That does not mean that you couldn't fly in hazy weather. I've heard some wild speculation on the radio and on television this morning, one of the network correspondents talking about as if some people who fly little airplanes are daredevils and have a death wish. I mean, that is definitely not the case. That's a perfectly good, safe airplane. It was equipped, I'm certain, with the latest avionics, probably even an autopilot, which if he had some trouble, if he punched on the autopilot, it would have kept the wings level and the aircraft at a particular altitude. So
it is a small plane, though, 24 feet long. You said with a 37-foot wingspan. Searching for a plane like that is incredibly difficult. Searching for a large aircraft is difficult.
No question, no question. It was difficult looking for the pieces of TWA's Flight 800, which was a 747, and there was another flight, a plane that went down off a 757. They were difficult. This is a Piper Saratoga, once called a Cherokee 6 places. It's a 300 horsepower engine, and
that's all we have. That's all we have time for tonight, folks. I have to explain a few things to you. Remember that the search was first concentrated off Montauk Point, and the reason was somebody had planted a transponder or a beacon there, and no plane had crashed there. No boat had sunk there. There was no reason for a beacon to be off Montauk Point, but somebody had planted one there to deliberately deceive the rescue operations. That's where they concentrated their search. Now, they had miles and miles of radar tapes of all the planes that were flying anywhere in that area that night, and it would have taken them days and days to go through those radar tapes in order to discover exactly if a plane dropped off the radar and when and where that happened. It wasn't until they found out. Now listen to this very carefully, because their denial that John F. Kennedy called the tower at Martha's Vineyard is the key to this whole thing. You see, they never would have known the right place to look if he had not made that call. When they discovered that he had made a call to the airport tower at Martha's Vineyard at 9:39 p.m., they instantly went to 9:39 p.m. at that position, 10 miles southwest of the Land's End of Martha's Vineyard, and they immediately saw his plane on the radar tapes at 2,500 feet. Exactly 12 seconds later, it was at 1,300 feet. Going from 2,500 feet to 1,300 feet in 12 seconds means the plane was in a severe diving attitude directly into the water. At that 1,300 foot point was the last indication of the plane on the radar. When they discovered that he had made that call at 9:39, and from that position where he reported his plane on his final glide path to the airport at Martha's Vineyard, they went to the radar tapes, found his plane on the radar tapes, moved the search to that exact position, and immediately discovered John F. Kennedy's beacon that was in the water there, began to see floating debris, luggage, pieces of the airplane, an airplane tire, etc., etc., etc. So that is the smoking gun. It proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that there's a serious cover-up connected with this. When you call the tower at Martha's Vineyard and attempt to talk to the person who was on duty that night, who actually received the radio call from John F. Kennedy Jr., you are told that that person is not there, hasn't been there for a long time, and probably will never be back. When you talk to these people that you heard tonight on this tape at WCVB-TV in Boston, they deny that they ever made this report. They just flatly deny it. We are not supposed to have this tape. Nobody is supposed to have this tape. We want this tape to go all over the country. If you want to copy this tape, send us $15 and we'll send you a copy postpaid right to your door. Then make copies and distribute it to everybody you know. So this tape can never, ever be buried. This is the key to the whole thing. This is what solves it. John F. Kennedy Jr. was murdered, ladies and gentlemen. 2 Saturdays after his plane crashed, and I posted this story on the website, a military officer acting as a courier on orders from his commanding officer brought me photographs and copies of the preliminary investigation reports based upon the wreckage and what they knew of the plane crash. What I saw in those photographs and in those reports was that a bomb detonated in a compartment in the tail section of the plane. The tail section was severed from the plane. The plane went into an immediate dive and crashed into the ocean. The cause of the detonation of the explosive was a barometric triggering device which was detonated when he flew below 2,500 feet. And that's the story. On the hour of the time, on this October the 13th, 1999, once again, the hour of the time has scooped the world. We have given you the truth, the real story, the story you never heard and never will hear on CNN, ABC, NBC, or CBS, what we commonly refer to here as the communist news networks. Good night, ladies and gentlemen. God bless you all. Good night, Annie, Pooh, and Allison. I love you. I love you. I hate being parted from you, but I must.
Before we get into the follow-up broadcast, at this point it seems as if John really did die in that crash. The smoking gun is the fake transponder designed to divert the search teams hundreds of miles from his true position. If he called the tower, which was covered up by the edited report recording, then the search would not have included such a large area. Radar Approach Control, RAPCON, would have known his precise position. If he died in that crash, then murder has to be concerted, because we have evidence of a cover-up and complicity by the mainstream media in that murder. Prime suspect is the frazzled rat, since she would have lost the New York Senate race to JJ in a landslide. On the other hand, if a pre-flight inspection discovered the alleged biometrically triggered bomb, the plot was uncovered and a fake crash was staged, perhaps by setting the plane on autopilot and bailing out on takeoff. The plane would then fly itself to Martha's Vineyard and on approach would explode just as intended. John would then be put in witness protection until such time as the plotters, who also had his father murdered, and their entire globalist satanic Nazi perpetrators could be discovered and led into an inescapable trap. I believe this to be the case. John is a good friend of our beloved president. This has been a long time in the planning. It's going to be biblical.
I'm William Cooper, and you're listening once again to the Hour of the Time. This is the only hour that ever was or ever will be. This is, ladies and gentlemen, the most important hour in your entire life. For during this hour, you will decide your future, and thus our collective futures.
Well. Good evening once again. You're listening to the Hour of the Time. I'm William Cooper. I want to recap a little bit what we went over last night so that it'll be fresh in your minds when we open the phone, because we're going to open the phones and talk about it tonight. We gave you the smoking gun, the truth about what really happened with John F. Kennedy last night. Took a long time. I told you a long time ago. You kept calling me up and asking me, what do you think really happened to John F. Kennedy Jr.? I told you I didn't know, but we're investigating. When we finish our investigation, we'll let you know. I think some of you didn't believe me. I never tell you anything that's not true, ever. I may make a mistake once in a while, but I never, ever lie to you. Never. And you can take that to the bank. It's the truth. We've been investigating this for a long time. Here's what you heard on the tape. You heard on the tape that they didn't have a clue as to what happened to John Fitzgerald Kennedy Jr. and his two passengers in his little light aircraft. In fact, somebody had intentionally planted a bogus beacon, which is the device on airplanes or ships that goes off and begins transmitting an SOS to say, help, help, we're here, here we are, listen to this beacon, home in on it, come and get the survivors. It's just like a beep, 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 beep. It has a specific frequency and a specific signal that it transmits, and everybody who hears it knows that somebody's in trouble. Somebody intentionally planted a fake, not a fake because it was a real beacon, but a deception beacon off Montauk Point. And that's where they were concentrating the search. Wherever you hear a beacon, a distress beacon, there's got to be a downed plane or a sunken ship or something. But there was nothing, because it was a deception. They say that John F. Kennedy never spoke to anybody on the radio. You know, I've been talking to pilots all my life, literally all my life. I was reared in an Air Force family. I've known pilots since the very first memory that I can remember. And I still know a lot of pilots. I don't know any pilots who take off from one place and go to another place without talking to somebody on the radio along the way. They told us that John F. Kennedy, after he took off, never spoke to anybody on the radio, never called anybody. If you were listening to the tape very carefully last night, you heard them say that he was in communication with an Air Force tower. And they told us that he never called his destination, which was Martha's Vineyard Airport. That was a lie. They said they had miles and miles of radar tapes, but they didn't know where to start looking for his plane or which plane on the tapes was his, and they didn't even know how to determine that because there's so many small planes in the air and they're not identified on radar. See, they squawk something called 1200, which is sort of a generic identifier. It means friendly, but nobody can tell who it is unless you call the radio and say, this is me. You have me on radar. I'm 14 miles from this place and 27 miles from that place, and I'm at such and such altitude. And then the guy says, oh yeah, we got you right here. But if you're not in the air, you're in the water, and you can't talk on the radio, they can't tell which one of those radar blips is your blip. And they had no idea where to search or where to look. They were looking everywhere until they discovered, by talking to the personnel who had been at work that night at the tower at Martha's Vineyard Airport, that John F. Kennedy had indeed called in when he was 10 miles from the land of Martha's Vineyard on his final approach, 19 actual miles from the airport at 2,500 feet. That's 2,500 feet, beginning his descent on his glide path to the airport. Now, in a small plane traveling 150 miles an hour, he was 7 minutes from landing. He was 19 miles from the airport. In a small plane, doing 150 miles an hour, it only takes him 7 minutes to get there. Now, in his glide path, getting ready to land, he would have started slowing down at some point, so it actually would have maybe taken him 8 or 9 minutes to get there. But just so you understand that 19 miles away in a small plane going 150 miles an hour is not a long way away, nor does it take very long to get there. So he was about maximum. Even if you stretch things, he was only 10 minutes from touchdown. 10 minutes from the time his wheels would have hit the runway at Martha's Vineyard when he called in. 2,500 feet, going 150 miles an hour, on his final approach to the airport. That means he was lined up with the runway. Also in the tape, and I don't know if we played it long enough for you to hear it, but it's on the tape. And this is a videotape, folks, that's 2 hours long. But it's on the tape. The official Martha's Vineyard weather report for that night at 9 p.m. was visibility 8 miles. At 10 p.m., visibility was 10 miles. He called in to the Martha's Vineyard Airport at 9:39 p.m. If you interpolate between the 8 miles and 10 miles, between 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock, it should have had visibility somewhere around 9 miles. That's real good visibility. People on the island and people on the beaches said that they could see the stars and they could see the moon, so there wasn't any ceiling. Pilots in the area said that there was haze and sometimes foggy and not too good a weather over the land, but it improved and got better as you went east. And anybody who has ever lived near the ocean knows that weather piles up on the land and is generally clear over the water, unless there's fog. There was no fog that night. So when all these experts got on television, told us that he was sure to crash because he did not have an instrument rating, he was flying over water at night, visibility was 0, the ceiling was 0, he couldn't see anything, it was foggy, they were lying. It was a lie. Blatant, bold-faced, bare-ass lie. Simple as that. This tape exposed it all. It's all on the tape. Now, last night, our broadcast was only an hour, so I only played an hour of what we have on that tape. By the way, if you want the tape, it's $15, blank money order or cash. I'll give you the address where to send for it later, just to let you know it's available, and it's a videotape, and it's beautiful. And we even have the means here to make it look better. So it's not what you're going to see on the tape that's important. It's what you hear on this tape that's important. But it's a great tape. It's crystal clear. It's beautiful. And as you heard last night, there's nothing garbled on there except one report of one reporter actually reporting by cell phone from the Kennedy home. And also, did you notice that all of a sudden the Kennedy home is now a compound, just like the Branch Davidians church and Randy Weaver's cabin and the Freeman's mobile home on their farm? Isn't it funny how when people get in the news, their home becomes a compound? What is this with this compound crap? And who's responsible for that? It's insanity, is what it is. Well, they were looking through the radar tapes, folks, and they couldn't locate his plane. In fact, they admitted it was going to take a long time to determine which plane on those radar types was his, and then even if they thought it was his, they wouldn't know for sure until they discovered that he had checked in and called in to the tower. That put him in a specific position at 2,500 feet, 10 miles southwest. 10 miles, or excuse me, yeah, that's right, 10 miles southwest of the southwest tip of Martha's Vineyard, put him 10 miles at 2,500 feet. They went to the radar tapes and sure enough, there he was, exactly at that position, 10 miles from the southwest tip of Martha's Vineyard Island at 2,500 feet, right on the tape. Exactly 12 seconds later, he was at 1,300 feet, and then the blip disappeared off the radar tape, and they knew that's where he was. That's where the plane was. They immediately moved the search to that area, and right away, they saw the luggage and pieces and bits of airplane in the water. So the story that he never called anybody was a lie. The story that he never checked in on the radio was a lie. He checked in with the Martha's Vineyard Tower, a Federal Aeronautics Administration person who was, what do they call those guys? Air controller. I believe that's what they call him. He called that guy. That guy made a report to the FAA. The FAA confirmed to the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard checked it and made sure it was true. The petty officer in charge of, first-class petty officer in charge of public relations was the one who was interviewed by WCVB in Boston, television, Channel 5 in Boston. And that he would not have been interviewed, nor would he have released information without approval of his commanding officer. That's the way it works in the Navy and in the Coast Guard and in the Army and in the Marine Corps. You don't do those things unless you have permission, unless everything's cleared and everything's been checked. That's the way it works. Later, they said, no, it never happened. And then they said they never made the report. When you asked them for a tape, they said there was no tape. Well, we found out who keeps their archives and went there, and they said, yeah, WCVB had told them to get rid of the tape. At least that portion beyond a certain time code. And they were supposed to, when somebody orders the tape, or actually they were supposed to take the master and erase all of that portion right before they went to the woman in the newsroom who was going to report that that John F. Kennedy Jr. had indeed called the tower at Martha's Vineyard. They were supposed to erase that all the way up to the 6 o'clock news, which was over 5 hours of broadcasting, because they talked about it all afternoon. And then the 6 o'clock news is when they said, oh, well, we thought maybe he might have called somebody on the radio, but we found out that may not be true. That's just a rumor. Remember that? You heard it last night. And then later, they denied that they even had it. Well, we sent people back to that archive place, and we found, you know, people are sometimes lazy. They put off what they're supposed to do, or they don't do it because, you know, it's time to quit, and they want to get home, and then they forget about it. Well, sure enough, the tape had never been erased. What they were doing is when somebody ordered the tape, they were playing the tape on a different kind of machine that measured the time code differently. And so they were cutting the tape just a few seconds too late, so you knew that they were reporting that John F. Kennedy had actually called the tower at Martha's Vineyard, and the Coast Guard Public Relations Petty Officer began to talk about it, then they cut it. Well, see, they don't listen to this when they're doing it. They cut it according to the time code that the station had given them, right up to the 6 o'clock news. And then they just picked it up to the 6 o'clock news and added that on the tape, and that's what you got. Well, we sent people there to get the whole tape by hook or crook, bribery, hold up, theft, we didn't care. And we got it. I'm not going to tell you how we got it. I'm not going to tell you who got it. I'm not going to tell you when they got it. But I'm going to tell you, this is the tape. And when you see it, if you get it, you'll see that it's real. We haven't tampered with it. Those are the real people who are the news reporters at WCVB Channel 5 in Boston. This is their tape. It's real. It's the real day's reporting, and we got the smoking gun. And it's amazing. Since then, everybody denies that there was ever a report. You can't find the petty officer who was the public relations petty officer. He's been transferred. Nobody knows where he's at. You can't talk to him. You can't talk to the air traffic controller at Martha's Vineyard. They won't let you talk to him. They won't tell you where he is. And every time you call to try to talk, they tell you he's not there. That's all we know is he's not here. You can get a hold of the people at the news room at WCVB Channel 5 in Boston by using any kind of ruse you want. We've got the story of the century. I got to talk to somebody now. Hi, is this a blip? Yeah, well, you know, you reported that John F. Kennedy Jr. had made a radio call to the Martha's Vineyard control tower at the airport at Martha's Vineyard at 9:39 on April the 16th, the night that his plane crashed. Oh, I never made any such report. You must be mistaken. There is no report. Nobody made any report. That's just a rumor. Bold-faced lies. And so that's the way it is. John F. Kennedy Jr. was murdered. We gave you the smoking gun last night. Absolutely proves that they're all lying and covering up. Also, when you talk to these people, you can hear tremendous fear in their voice. They're scared to death. Somebody has put terror into their hearts. The people at the control tower at Martha's Vineyard Airport, when you mention that subject, you can hear their voice trembling. They're scared to death. They don't want to talk to you. The people in the newsroom also, scared to death. They're terrorized. Literally terrorized. And so I bet we have really stirred things up with last night's broadcast. And that's the way it should be. Now, folks, 520-333-4578. What do you think about what you heard last night? What can you add, if anything? You know anything about this? 520-333-4578. And take your calls for the rest of the hour. Why did they kill John F. Kennedy Jr.? Anybody got any ideas? I know why. Bet you don't. Good evening. You're on the air.
Los Angeles. Hey, I do a lot of flying out of Whiteman Airport. About at least twice a month, the Civil Air Patrol is out there with their little meters looking for emergency locator beacons that go off in the aircraft parked on the tarmac. So that's a very, I mean, for them to say that it not, it was just a joke. And also I want to say that he was flying out of an area that has its air traffic control, which means he had to have his transponder on, and that thing gives a signal out to the air traffic control that tells you exactly where you are, your height.
Yeah, but it doesn't tell him who he is.
Yeah, but as soon as he took off, when he took off into an air traffic control, and they knew when he left the ground where his position was.
No, they didn't. They didn't know it was him. See, he never filed a flight plan.
No,
they never knew where he was or which blip was him ever.
Well, I find that hard to believe, because as soon as you contact the tower and you take off and you come up to elevation, your specific altitude, entering the TCA, you must contact them and tell them you're there so that they know not to fly a jet right into your airspace.
Oh, yes, I know that. And
so I just got the question at it. One more thing. I think they rigged the fire extinguisher to go off with a barometric device as it dropped back below altitude, and the CO2 discharged inside the cockpit, rendering them unconscious. That's my theory on the situation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for calling. Yeah, well, let me explain so you don't get confused about what he said. What he said is true. When you climb up, you're in an air control, traffic control area, you've got to check in, and you've got to, that's why I said this nonsense that he never called anybody is total bullshit. It's a lie. Could not have happened. He had to be calling people all along the way. That's heavy traffic control. That's on the approaches to JFK and a whole bunch of other big airports, Newark, and, lots of them. A lot of air traffic there, and it's heavily controlled. So he could not possibly have taken off and not contacted anybody. He had to be talking to people all along the way. So that whole concept is a total lie. But it is true that those little planes like that, they have a transponder and they have to have it turned on so the air traffic controllers can see their blip on their radar, and so that they can, direct traffic so that planes don't collide and things, but they don't know who's on that plane or who it belongs to or anything like that. They don't have to know. All they have to do is see the plane and be able to direct traffic, and so on and so forth. The airport where he took off from may have known that that was his plane and he was on board, but beyond that, nobody else had to know, and unless he called in and told them, they wouldn't know, but they would see his blip on the radar. Now, large airplanes have transponders that squawk a specific code that tell the air traffic controllers exactly what plane that is, who it belongs to, where it left from, and where it's going, and all that kind of stuff. But small planes do not do that. You heard it on the tape, what he was squawking, and they call it squawking. It's a little transponder that sends out a signal that says, here I am, right here on your radar, and, you know, don't let anybody bump into me, and it's called 1200. It doesn't identify anything beyond that, except here I am. Who is it? Well, I don't know. What is it? I don't know. It's a little plane. That's all they know. Okay, 520-333-4578 is the number. I'm going to take your calls for the rest of the evening and talk about this. What do you think about it? What do you know about it? You know anything about it at all? The first caller gave us some good information. It's true. It's a heavily controlled air corridor where John F. Kennedy Jr. was flying. Absolutely impossible for him not to have called anybody along the way. He would have. And the weather over land was not that good. I mean, it was okay for VFR, which is Visual Flight Rules, which means if you're a qualified VFR pilot, you can fly without an instrument rating. But it was still a little hazy, and I imagine he probably went through some places where visibility wasn't too good. But once he got out of the water, it cleared up really nice. Good evening, you're on the air.
Hi, Bill. This is Dwayne from Duquesne. I just wondered regarding the reason for the killing. Do you think perhaps John was preparing something in his magazine that he was publishing that somebody didn't want to get out? Or?
Well, he might have been, but I don't think they'd kill him for that.
Right, right. I just wondered, too, about the funeral. Was there any symbology that anybody noticed that may have shown that there were some secret organizations behind this?
Ah, what makes you think secret organization? I'm curious.
It happened with his dad.
Huh?
It happened with his dad.
Why did it happen with his dad? See, that's the key to the whole thing.
Well, he was bucking the New World Order in three ways that you mentioned in one of your presentations, with the exposing of the UFO, the intention to tear the CIA up, and to reinstitute constitutional money.
But he wasn't opposing a world government.
Right. I guess it's evident by the way he transferred the U.S. military over to the UN in '61.
Not only that, but he's the one who proposed the disarmament treaty and created, well, you know, all the disarmament stuff was on his watch.
Right, right.
Which includes disarmament of all of us.
All right. That's right. That's three parts of the scenario that you mentioned.
Yeah, you're on the right track, but you haven't got a clue yet.
Right, okay.
You should have a clue, but you don't.
Okay, I'll hang up and listen to somebody else then.
Okay, thanks for calling.
Thanks, Bill.
520-333-4578 is the number. Yeah, he was on the right track, and he was so close, but he just didn't get it. Good evening, you're on the air.
Hey, good evening, Mr. Cooper.
Hello.
Hey, I've heard that there was a meeting between JFK Jr. and Hillary Clinton the day before that plane went down. Do you have any knowledge of that?
No.
Okay, well, I'll see if I can't dig deeper and get some information on that for you.
Yeah, I'd love to know about it if there was such a meeting that would help clarify things.
Yeah, well, you know, if that plane was blown out of the sky as we suspect that it was,
whoa. I'm sorry. Are your ears okay?
Yeah, I'm fine, thank you.
Okay, mine aren't. Boy, that almost blew my brains out. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was saying, if that plane was blown out of the sky as we suspect that it was, it's no surprise that they did away with the body so quickly, because they probably had some sort of residue on them as well, don't you think?
Well, I don't know. That's a possibility, but they did away with everything.
They certainly did.
Where's the wreckage? How come nobody was ever allowed to take pictures of the wreckage? Why did they lie about his calling the Martha's Vineyard airport?
I don't know, but I tell you, whoever's responsible for this is awfully good at getting rid of all this evidence, aren't they?
Well, no, they're good at buffaloing the American people so the American people accept it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they're good at.
Well, listen, thanks a lot. I just want to check in on that Hillary Clinton thing with you.
Well, you're close, too. You're all close, but you're so far away.
That's good. I'm checking out everything that you're saying here, you know, because I'm learning a great deal from listening to your show. I tape it every night.
Good.
It's a great show. Thanks.
You're welcome. Thanks for calling. 520-333-4578 is the number. What happened here? What do you know about it? Anything? Good evening, you're on the air.
Mr. Cooper.
Yes, sir.
I think it's the Federal Reserve connection.
Think so? Why?
Well, his dad knew about it and was taking measures to have real money. And I think he might have been on to that.
But that's not it either.
Oh, well.
You're you know, you understand part of it, but you're not even close.
Okay.
Okay? Thanks. Thanks for calling. 520-333-4578. I hope one of you gets it. And don't feel bad if you didn't get it, or if you don't understand it, you know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you're right after all. And if you don't check up on all of this stuff and verify it, you'll never know, will you? Good evening, you're on the air. He was a threat. You got it nailed right on the head, but you don't understand why he's a threat. He's a Democrat. Why wouldn't they want him to run? They don't care who is, as long as it's one of them. I just gave it away. You weren't listening.
Well, I'm not used to being on the air, but
that's okay. Don't get scared or nervous, and don't feel bad about any of this.
Yeah.
We're trying to make this a learning experience.
Okay.
So why would they think it was bad for him to run against Hillary? Hillary's nothing special. They don't care if she wins or loses. They just want one of them to win. Hello?
Yes. Well, let's see. All right. If that's the case, then why Bill Clinton?
Because Bill Clinton's one of them.
Yeah, but I mean, if whoever gets in office is one of them, and it makes no difference if it's Republican or Democrat, that's just for the mass media.
Yeah.
Just so they feel like they got a winner.
That's right.
So, if...
With the Kennedy name, he would have been a winner. I've given you every clue in the world. You want me to tell you right out flat?
Yeah.
He's not one of them.
Well, you cut out on me. Say it again.
He's not one of them. Never has been. Why do you think they've been killing Kennedys for so long? This is an ancient war. It didn't start yesterday.
Okay, so I know there were some things that John was going to do. I think was at the Federal Reserve. He was going to...
No, you don't have a clue. Let's let somebody else get in
Okay.
here. Thanks a lot for calling.
All right.
Appreciate your try. Good evening, you're on the air. Nope, you're not on the air. There's nobody there. Okay, 520-333-4578 is the number. We're going to take your calls. I've given out enough clues. Somebody should have it pinned right this second. Good evening, you're on the air.
Yes, Bill. I was wondering if it had to do with the fact that he is not a member of one of the so-called black nobility families that trace their, roots back to the ancient monarchies and things like that.
Has nothing whatsoever to do with it. In fact, he does have relationships in nobility.
Oh, the Kennedy family is?
They have blood, and they have noble blood in their veins, yeah.
I see.
Their family goes back to Ireland, but their family also goes into some very famous, very royal bloodlines.
So do you think that the Montauk area had anything to do with the actual...
Montauk has absolutely nothing to do with anything. Preston Nichols and what's his name are bullshit artists from way back.
Oh, really?
Oh, really, yeah. If you can't delve that just from reading the book, I mean, you gotta be...
Well, I haven't read the book. I've just
Get the book and read it. It's obvious. If you buy into that crap, you're off the deep end.
Right. Well, so what were you saying, though, that it's an ancient war?
Well, if I tell you that, I give you the answer. I'm trying to get you guys to use your brain.
Well, we're trying.
Okay. I know you're trying. I hear it.
All right, thanks.
Thanks for calling.
Okay, bye.
520-333-4578. Why'd they kill him? Why'd they kill his dad? What's the link here? What's it all about? Alfie? Good evening, you're on the air.
Hi, Bill. This is Pauline.
Hi, Pauline.
Okay, would it have anything to do with the Clintons being in the Trilateral Commission? I think it's how you say it, and not the Kennedys?
Does it have anything to do with what now? The Clintons being in the Trilateral Commission and not the Kennedys?
Yeah.
No.
Well, okay. I tried.
That's a good try. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll hang up and let someone else try.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks for calling. 520-333-4578. Yeah, I got a picture of Pauline I'm going to put on the website. So you guys stand by. She's going to knock your socks off wearing an Hour of the Time t-shirt and hat. Good evening. You're on the air.
Hi, Bill.
Hi.
Rick in Ohio. How are you?
Hi, Rick.
Just a thought. The long protracted battle between English Freemasonry and the Rockefeller Rothschild clan and French Freemasonry aligned with the Vatican, and the Kennedy link to French Freemasonry, the warfare that's been going on between those two factions vying for control of the New World Order.
You got it right on the head, Rick. That's exactly what it's all about.
Okay, Bill, I'm going to jump off.
Thanks for calling.
You're welcome.
That's it, folks. It's the ancient battle. The ancient battle between the secret societies and the Vatican. That's it, right on the head. This country was built by Freemasons, who built this country to set the common man free, so to cause and spark revolutions around the world and topple kings and queens from their thrones, to create a godless sectarian world. Good evening, you're on the air.
Yes, how you doing, Bill?
Pretty good.
Listen, I had a question. I understand about all these secret societies, but basically I think the Kennedys are dealing on the exoteric levels, and these secret societies deal on the esoteric levels. And I was wondering, I've been reading some of your stuff, and I've seen some other, there's some other places too, the difference between microcosms and the macrocosm. What's that all about?
What's it all? Well, that's not the subject tonight, and I don't have time to, be teaching those kind of lessons. That's pretty deep philosophy there. As above, so below.
Is that really what's part of this ancient war that's been going on?
No, this is strictly a battle between the church and the lodge.
Okay, so this is part of the physical dimension.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, excellent. I listen to your show all the time. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for calling. Yeah, let me read you something, folks. This is another one of my prize library books. And I looked for many years to find this book once I discovered that it existed. It's called The Scarlet Book of Freemasonry. It was printed in 1880. And this is the reason for the whole thing. Now listen very carefully to me, okay? Scarlet Book of Freemasonry, containing a thrilling and authentic account of the imprisonment, torture, and martyrdom of Freemasons and Knights Templars for the past 600 years. Also, an authentic account of the education, remarkable career, and tragic death of the renowned philosopher Pythagoras. Recent remarkable discovery of Masonic emblems on an ancient obelisk in Egypt. The same obelisk, by the way, that was moved from Egypt and now stands in Central Park in New York City. Now just let me read the preface to you. Freemasonry, being a benevolent institution and entirely unsectarian, listen to me, entirely unsectarian, it is hardly credible that its votaries have for centuries been objects of a bitter persecution, and that large numbers of them have suffered death in defense of their principles. Yet such is the case, as the Roman Catholic Church has relentlessly persecuted, tortured, and burnt them at the stake for the past 600 years. And this persecution is still carried on wherever popery has the power to do its bloody work. With the exception of the most recent occurrences, the only knowledge heretofore accessible of this warfare against Freemasonry has been the disconnected accounts furnished by history and the narratives of a few of the sufferers who escaped with their lives. Therefore, the aim of the author in this work is to present in a convenient form a connected and complete account of the persecutions and martyrdoms of Freemasons and Knights Templars by the Catholic Church. Also, to show the fraternity the nature and character of the sanguinary enemy Freemasonry has had and still has to deal with throughout the world. The information concerning the persecutions of Masons and Knight Templars has been collected from the most authentic works of the periods in which the persecutions took place and from the forced admissions of popish writers themselves. The life and philosophy of Pythagoras was gathered from rare and authentic ancient works and is complete and reliable. That's the whole thing in a nutshell, ladies and gentlemen. There is a war between the Christian church in all of its forms, but mainly against Catholicism and the Vatican. But all Christians, bear this in mind, they're at war with all Christians, all nation states, and against the mob. And their goal is to destroy all of it and create a one-world totalitarian socialist government. Good evening, you're on the air.
Yes, Bill. That seems to tie in with what's in the Protocols of Zion.
Exactly. I've said it many, many moons. The Illuminati wrote the Protocols of Zion, not the Jews.
Okay. Just a quickie here. In defense of the use of the word compound, I live here in Massachusetts, and the media has always, as long as I've been alive, referred to their Hyannisport home as a compound. The place is huge. It's not just a house. It's, houses for each of the family members, and they have function halls. They put on weddings for 500 people. And,
so what? It's their home.
Well, it's big.
How would you like your home to be called a compound, no matter how big it is?
Well, or compound meaning more than one building, just like in Martha's Vineyard. Now, that's a huge piece of property. I've been by there too, and it's just.
Yeah. Well, let's get back to the regular subject. Thank you for that. So they've been doing it forever, huh?
Yeah, in Massachusetts anyway.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Yep. Bye.
Thanks for calling. 520-333-4578 is the number. What do you know about all this? See, this is an ancient war, ladies and gentlemen. An ancient war between the minions of the material world who believe that man is God and those who believe in God. Good evening, you're on the air.
Oh, hi. I was listening to Art Bell last night. I was just wondering if you happened to listen to his program. There was somebody from Minneapolis that had mentioned that he was listening to your program and told the story of what you were saying about, Kennedy, and Art Bell was acting very skeptical about the whole thing, and I was just wondering...
Art Bell is a Freemason.
Yeah,
he's a member of the Illuminati. When he wears the skull and bones on his T-shirt, he's laughing at everybody. That's the emblem of the Knights Templar.
Right.
Did you know that?
Yeah. And I was just thinking the same thing. I mean, it's been known that...
I call him Art Bullshit Bell.
Well,
our Art Ding Dong Bell.
Well, I was just wondering if anybody else heard that program.
Our Art Ding-a-ling Bell.
Well, I guess they say that the Catholics are, cannon fodder for Luciferian organizations, and I'm just going to hang up, but I was just wondering if anybody heard that program last night too on Art Bell.
Okay, no, I very seldom ever listen to Art Bell unless I know he's going to make a big blooper, and I just love to tape those and use them on my show.
Oh, well, there was a person that said that he was listening to your program, and, he heard what you were saying about, JFK's investigation and stuff like that.
I didn't say it. It was on the Boston tape.
Well,
it's all there. I didn't say it. I proved it.
Well, I guess somebody had mentioned too that there was like a bomb, and there was a bomb, and some investigator knew something about it or something like that. Did you hear anything about this? About the bomb being in his...
Yes, I talked about it last night.
Oh.
You weren't listening, were you?
Oh.
You were listening to Art Bell, weren't you?
No. I was listening to your program, but I didn't catch the entire program.
It's okay if you listen to Art Bell.
Oh, no.
It's all right.
Well, I listen to him more for entertainment than anything else. I mean, I don't really...
It's okay.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna hang up there, and I was just wondering if anybody else heard that, though.
I don't know.
Okay, I'll talk to you later.
Okay. Bye. Good night. And thanks for calling. 520-333-4578 is the number. Yeah, you guys can listen to everybody. Just understand that when you're listening to them, including when you're listening to me, don't believe anything unless you can prove it in your own research. How many times have I told you that? Good evening, you're on the air.
Hi, Bill. This is Dave from New Hampshire. I'm listening on WBCQ out of Monticello, Maine.
Hi, Dave. When are you guys going to have your revolution?
Pretty quick. We're preparing right now.
Good for you.
Preparation is never done. So, listen, I have this thing that I get off the internet, and it says that Janet Reno was on 60 Minutes on 6/26/99. Listen to this. The alarming statement from Janet Reno. Regardless of your religious affiliation, this is what your government leaders think of you. The following is a quote from Janet Reno on 60 Minutes interview on 6/26/99. Quote, "A cultist is one who has a strong belief in the Bible and the second coming of Christ, who frequently attends Bible studies, who has a high level of financial giving to the Christian cause, who homeschools their children."
That's a lie. She
who
never.
has accumulated survival foods. And
She never said that.
She never said.
She never said that.
Okay.
No, that's a direct quote that people said that she said back in 1993.
Okay.
Exact same quote. Somebody is floating it around again.
So she did say this.
She never said it.
Never said it.
Never, ever said it.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. I just wanted to clear that up.
When I first heard that, I tried to track it down. You know what I tracked it down to? A little newsletter out of Fullerton, California.
Yes.
The guy that writes the newsletter said that she said it, and he put it in his newsletter, but there is no person living on this earth who ever heard it actually come out of her mouth.
All right.
Ever.
All right. So now let's get back to the JFK thing.
Okay.
Now I didn't catch the show. It wasn't coming in quite great.
Now, let me
15 minutes.
let me explain something. For all of you out there who are listening to this, I don't like Janet Reno. I will never stick up for her when she's wrong.
Good for you.
But when she's right, I'll stick up for anybody when she's right or when they're being lied about.
The worst lie you can tell is a lie to yourself.
Yeah, she never, ever said that.
Okay.
So go ahead.
Okay. So, I missed the first 15 minutes, and can you go over his approach? And he was 2,500 feet off the water.
Yeah.
The last they knew of him.
10 miles from the tip of the island. Yeah.
And
No. When he dropped off radar, he was at 1,300 feet. He went from 2,500 feet to 1,300 feet in 12 seconds.
Right.
And then disappeared.
Okay. So what's everybody saying has happened to him?
Well, why don't you go around and ask everybody?
I have been, but I want to hear.
Well, then you tell me. What's everybody saying?
I heard the gentleman who said about the ancient war of the...
Did you listen to last night's broadcast?
No, I didn't.
Then you're out in left field. You get the tape and listen to it. You don't even know what we're talking about.
Okay.
We're talking about last night's broadcast.
Okay.
How could you miss that?
It wasn't coming in on my shortwave.
Okay, let's let somebody else get in here then.
Okay, thanks a lot, Bill.
Thanks for calling.
Take care.
520-333-45. No wonder he didn't know what was going on. He didn't hear the broadcast last night. So he didn't know. Everybody needs to get the tape. You can order the audio tape of last night's broadcast for $11, or you can order the 2-hour videotape, which was the subject of last night's broadcast, or both. Good evening. You're on the air.
Hi, Bill.
Hi.
I can't hear you on the shortwave because you're going in and out, but I'll take a shot at it. I don't know if anybody answered it yet.
Yeah, it's been answered.
Excuse me?
It's been answered.
Oh, what was the answer?
It's the ancient war between the lodge and the church.
Okay, I'm sorry I missed it. The propagation's not very good.
As long as the lodge controls this country, there will never be Catholics in charge unless it's by accident, and they won't stay there.
Okay, hey, it's great to talk to you. I've been a big fan of yours for years.
Okay.
Can I ask you a question about something else?
Sure.
About the Nuremberg trials. You know who Hjalmar Schacht is?
Not right off the top of my head.
He was Hitler's banker.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And after he was exonerated, he went on to run Odessa.
Okay. No.
Do you know what Odessa is?
I know what Odessa is, yeah.
Okay, well, I read in a certain book that, well, if anybody should have been put in prison, it should have been him. But recently I read that he was a Freemason. Did you know that?
Well, they were all Freemasons. Hitler's rise to power wasn't from some obscure political movement in Germany. He was brought to power by the Tool Society, which was the German branch of the Knights Templar, the Teutonic Knights.
Right. I read Spear of Destiny, and I know about that, but eventually they turned against the Freemasons.
Who?
The Nazi leadership.
Dictators always do. They know how they rose to power through the secret societies and the machinations of the secret network, and they don't want to be deposed by that same process that brought them to power. Stalin also destroyed Freemasonry in Russia.
Yeah, and there were certain, like Heydrich wanted to get rid of Schacht, but I guess they had to keep him on because he was so valuable.
I don't know how valuable he was, but he knew where the money was. Let's put it that way.
That's for damn sure.
Money talks.
Okay, Bill. Good night. I'm glad to see you putting your website together.
No, thanks.
Okay, good night.
Good night. 520-333-4578 is the number. And we're taking your calls, and we're talking about last night's broadcast and what it was all about. Why was he killed? Kennedy was killed at the time of sacrifice, when the sun was directly overhead. Everybody thinks the sun is always directly overhead at 12 o'clock noon. That's not true. It depends upon what degree of longitude you are on as the sun is passing over in your time zone. And at the exact moment that President John F. Kennedy was killed in Dallas, Texas, in Dealey Plaza, which is an outdoor temple of the sun, just full of mystic and esoteric and occult symbolism, the sun was directly overhead. He was killed in a grove right next to the grassy knoll. He was the sacrificed king. He was shot in the chest area, in the neck, and in the head, the same exact wounds suffered by Hiram Abiff in the Masonic initiation. John F. Kennedy was killed by the Lodge. He was killed by the secret societies because he's Catholic. It was a strike at the church. The Freemasons have moved in and taken over completely the Southern Baptist Church. The Southern Baptist Church is owned, operated, and controlled today by Freemasonry. Don't believe me? Check it out, man. They are so heavily entrenched that it was the major subject of one of the most recent Southern Baptist conventions. 520-333-4578. Their goal is to destroy all existing religions, especially Christianity in all of its forms. Destroy all existing nation-states and shackle the mob. And to understand why they want to shackle the mob, you need to read the story of the execution of Jacques de Molay and the leaders of the Knights Templars, when the mob jeered and yelled and had such a great time watching them burn. They have some solid reasons for doing what they're doing. But you see, they don't understand, like I do, that what they're doing to get even is the same thing that the church did to them. And also, the Lodge, in its pagan origins, were burning Christians long before Christians ever burned Freemasons. Nobody can win at this kind of battle. Everybody loses. That's why I don't like any of them. I'm not on either side. I think they're all a bunch of scum, to tell you the truth. And I'm still a Christian. You know why? Because instead of belonging to a organized religion, I read the words of Jesus Christ and I try my very best to follow them. He is my church. He is my church. I don't need anything else. I don't need a big building with spires on top and bishops and popes and ministers and all of that kind of stuff. I don't need them. Jesus Christ is my church. Wherever I am, He's there with me. Always. Good evening, you're on the air.
Yeah, hi Bill. This is Vince in Minneapolis.
Hi, Vince.
Hi, I'm the fellow that called Art Bell last night and brought up your program. I mentioned your name specifically, and Art Bell wasn't too pleased, I don't think, when I mentioned your name in your book, Behold a Pale Horse.
Oh, he doesn't like me because I've exposed the Lodge and exposed the Illuminati and exposed him.
Yeah, he was totally spewing the mainstream media line about the bad weather and how Kennedy was an inexperienced pilot, and I was just kind of stretching with disinformation. I was talking about your program, and I was stretching, and just because of the Kennedy name, you know, blah, blah, blah. But I totally believe that It was a sacrifice. I just wanted to ask you, you know, it was the 3-year anniversary of the TWA Flight 800 plane that was blown out of the sky, basically in the same area.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering if...
Had nothing to do with it.
Had nothing to do with that?
Nothing.
No sort of war between the Freemasons and...
No, nothing to do with it. No. Flight
Okay. Hey, Billy, you had mentioned...
TWA Flight 800 was knocked out of the sky by a missile fired from an Iranian submarine.
But you know how sometimes, you know, these anniversary dates and the symbology, I was wondering if there's any connection there.
None at all. It was a tit for tat. One of our ships in the Persian Gulf blew an Iranian airliner out of the sky, and there was not going to be any peace between the United States and Iran was going to send terrorists over here and blow up Americas forever unless we made an agreement. And the agreement was we would allow one of their subs to come in off JFK Airport and blow one of our airliners out of the sky, and that's exactly what happened.
Hey, Bill, you had mentioned yesterday...
And you notice right after the crash of TWA Flight 800, relationships with Iran were instantly rectified, improved, much better.
Bill, you mentioned an investigator that examined John Kennedy Jr.'s plane wreckage and said that it looked like a bomb in the tail section.
He didn't tell me it looked like a bomb. He showed me documents pinned by the investigators and photographs of the wreckage. That's what he showed me. And that's, we're out of time.
Oh, okay.
See you later.
Talk to you later.
Bye. That's it, folks. We're out of time. Buenos noches and all that kind of stuff. See you tomorrow night. Don't miss it. Well, I won't see you tomorrow. See you Monday night. Don't miss it. Good night, Annie, Pooh, and Allison. I love you with all my heart and soul.
Now, years after this broadcast, we have a bit more insight. If JJ contacted air traffic control at Martha's Vineyard, you would logically assume that he was aboard the aircraft instead of taking off, putting the plane on autopilot, and bailing out after he was airborne, as previously speculated. That might seem a bit dangerous, and more of a job for a Hollywood stuntman than JJ. True, but it is entirely unknown when or if the bomb was discovered. The pre-flight inspection may have discovered the bomb hours before the flight plan was filed, giving him time to plan the trap that would fake his death, taking him off the cabal's hit list, and free him to plan their demise. His report to air traffic control at Martha's Vineyard could have been made from another small plane that was shadowing his sabotaged Cessna. I know it seems too complex to plan on such short notice, but if the bomb was discovered early enough, that would make the scenario of faking his own death and get everyone and the cabal to believe it is not so implausible. Take into consideration what Bill Cooper said about Masonic-Vatican rivalry that goes way back and before the founding of this nation. Either side is evil, and according to Cooper's analysis, neither of the two are in any way, shape, manner, or form desirable. If Bill's analysis is in any way accurate, our beloved president is in much more mortal danger than we can imagine. Donald Trump is the outsider that neither side of the satanic cabals want. He is the existential threat that neither side can afford to abide. Until the hosts of these demons are eradicated from the planet, the liberty of all humans on Earth is in jeopardy. Any harm, or any attempt to harm our president, must be met with overwhelming, unrelenting, and merciless retaliation by all patriots. I believe, and I pray it's true, that John is still with us and will be announced as the president's vice presidential running mate for 2020. That would be epic. It would be the best thing to ever happen to this planet. Except, of course, for this. This is Dave from Net4Truth USA Whirlwind Revolt. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to our backup channels, Whirlwind Revolt, Inglorious Patriots, and Net4Truth USA 2 Patriot channel. You can also find us at Net4Truth USA on BitChute. We fly so close to the target, we're on our 4th fighter jet. We will be relentless truth seekers until the enemies of freedom are defeated. You can support this channel by using the links in the description, but for a $100 donation, I will personally send you a autographed hardcover special edition copy of Land of Childhood's Fears. Also, visit my bookstore at lulu.com/Net4Truth USA. If you are viewing this video on BitChute, you can use the links in the description to support us, or simply click the green $ dot on our video to support this channel. Thank you. Links are in the description section.